Oh, hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode of our You and Your Superannuation. This is number 15, and it's all about a strategy called transition to retirement, setting up a pension effectively while you're still at work, if it makes sense. Before we get off with the details, there is our disclaimer. Facts and figures, it's information only, is not to be considered to be advice. Okay, transition to income stream. In the previous session, we talked about setting up an income stream basically for once you'd retired over your preservation age. However, you are indeed allowed to start one of these income streams or account-based pensions as we call them while you are still working, but basically you have to have reached your preservation age. So effectively from 60 on, there'll be a few people who can do this at 59 because that's their preservation age. But basically what it boils down to is you have reached your preservation. You haven't yet reached 65 because at 65 there is no preservation. So between this 5-year period from 60 to 65, if you start a pension while you're still working, you're doing what is called a transitional income stream. Now, effectively, all the rules that we spoke about in the previous session are the same. Still got a minimum withdrawal of 4%. But while you're still working, there is now a maximum withdrawal of 10%. So you can't take out more than 10% of your balance as a pension while you are still working as a transitional pension. But in theory, if someone actually needed to access their super to a degree while they're still working, they could set up a pension that pays them once a year. So a lump of money of 10% of their super could indeed be withdrawn as a one lump sum. It's actually going to be an annual payment, but that's how you could indeed access 10% of your super should you wish. But yeah, there are generally speaking some other reasons that we would do this. Okay, now you'd still need your super account open. You're not converting all of your money to pension because if you're still working, you need an accumulated super fund for your employer to pay the money into. So they are paying into your super account. And what we've done is we've rolled over a big chunk, perhaps, of our super into pension. We've kept some money in our super account for our employer to keep on paying. So we now have a super account and a pension account at the same time. So why? Because we simply might want to generate some more income while we're still working. So you might think, gosh, I'd love to go on holiday, but I can't afford it. So we might just rip into our super a bit here and take that extra income from the pension to go on holiday. Or pay down debt. If interest rates are starting to kill you, it could be a bit difficult. And you go, oh gosh, I'm going to use my super anyway to pay down my mortgage later on. Well, why shouldn't I do it now at 10% of my balance to reduce this mortgage in case interest rates go up even further? Or, just have more money to live on. So just an improved lifestyle. And that's what, some people do. It could be a case that you've got to 60 and you're going, oh, I really hate working full time. I wish I could go part time, but I just can't afford to live on a part-time income. But if I kept on working part time, at least I'd still be growing my super, but I just can't do it. Well, you could indeed have a part-time salary, supplement it with this superannuation pension at the same time that your employer is actually paying back into your super account. So perhaps what's coming out of your pension equals what your employer is putting in or close to it. So you're not really eating too much out of your super money, and it does mean that you're still getting salary. So it could be the case that we've got this part-time income added together with a bit of our super there that we can live quite comfortably. However, the third one is basically what you might have heard of this thing called a strategy called transition to retirement strategy. And what this is all about was using these rules of being able to access a pension while you're still working to basically take advantage of the tax benefits. And so what you're doing is you are still working, still getting employer paid into your super, but you do some salary sacrifice, but at the same time you're pulling a pension. Now, if you can't afford to do salary sacrifice, if you've got a pension, perhaps we could use the pension money, and we're getting that money out post-60 totally tax-free. We can get this money tax-free coming from a pension that we can then contribute back into the super fund, getting a tax deduction. So we're taking tax-free money to contribute to a super fund, getting a tax deduction. So what we're doing is really effectively moving it around in circles. So our pension's now going back into our super account. The super is growing while our pension's coming down, but we're getting a tax deduction in the middle. And eventually we would retire with a bigger, with our increased super that we've got from all the salary sacrifice. So let's have a look how this works. So here we've got an employer, and they're paying wages after tax into the bank account. And so, and also they're paying superannuation, could be into another PSS or CSS, but probably possibly into your normal super fund. And they're also salaries, and you might be doing some salary sacrifice with all within the caps. So you've got employer paying into super fund, and they're also paying wages into a bank account. You set up your account-based pension from a portion of your super fund, and where of course that portion, that pension account is paying into your bank account. And so your total income is indeed the combination of the employer wages after tax and the pension. Let's put some numbers to it. So here's our employer, and you're on a salary of $100,000, getting super contributions on the $100,000 going into the super fund. By the time you pay tax and Medicare, then this is before the stage 3 tax cuts will come in, then effectively this person is paying nearly $27,000 in tax, and therefore going into their bank account is $73,000. So their total income is effectively just their net pay of $73,000. So that's with no salary sacrifice. So $73,000 is what we've got as our income there. If, however, what we decide to do is to salary sacrifice $10,000, so the employer is still paying into our super fund as per normal, then you decide to salary sacrifice, so effectively your pay goes down to $90,000 from the 100 down to 90. They're going to put the $10,000 into your super fund. You lose the 15% contributions tax, as we explained in the salary sacrifice episode. And so you've got $8,500 going into the super fund. Now the tax has gone down, literally, because you're now being taxed on $90,000. So the employer is indeed putting $66,953 into the bank account. Now we've set up a pension here, and we've got a pension that is effectively paying us $6,100. Now, obviously, we've picked a number here specifically to basically get this $6,100, and effectively it could be that we've got a $61,000 amount of money we've moved into pension phase, taking out that maximum of 10%. So we're pulling out 10% of our pension, which is $6,100 on a $61,000 lump of money in our pension account. That $6,100 is tax-free. So it's added to our $66,900 from our salary, and of course we've now still got our income. Our income's remained exactly the same at $73,000, but we've now got $8,500 has gone into our super fund. And of course, we've got the tax deduction where we've paid less tax. So we've paid less tax, more money into our super fund, and we've got this money coming from the pension account. So what we've done effectively is just move this money around in circles, pension going into salary, salary going back into super, and so forth. So the benefits are the tax. The benefits are the tax. Now, of course, if you can already afford to salary sacrifice up to that cap we talked about, the $27,500 minus the employer, then we don't need to do this. But if you can only afford to salary sacrifice a little bit, and you'd love to be able to salary sacrifice more to get tax deductions, and you're planning to work post 60, then up until at least to say 60, up before 65, then over that period of time, we can set up a transition to retirement pension. So it works. It's not quite as good as it used to be when we had tax-free tax-free on the earnings before the age of 60. But now preservation age is 60 anyway. It's pretty much working pretty well for anyone over the age of 60. Remembering, of course, that there is a cap on how much money we can move into pension phase of 1.9. I don't think that's going to be a problem for anyone who's looking to do this strategy. If you are indeed reached your preservation age already, so you're under 60, but you've reached your preservation age, you can certainly do this immediately. But remembering that if you take an income from a pension, from an income stream under 60, then we've got to pay tax, and we're paying tax on the earnings at 15%. But at the same time, we're also paying tax on the bit that needs to be taxed. There's generally speaking a tax-free component, and the taxable component would be taxed, normal marginal tax rate, but with a 15% offset. So look, there could be, depending on your numbers there, how much tax you would have to pay under 60. But over 60, it obviously with our income coming in tax-free, it makes a significant difference there. Generally speaking, you'd need at least 20,000 to start a pension. Most super funds will ask you for 20, some might want 25 or 30. So just find out what the minimum amount is. But ideally what we're trying to do here is to take a pension that's going to give us the money we need to be able to salary sacrifice back up to our cap. That's the sort of way to start thinking about this. So we don't need to move it, all of it across. You don't want to move too much so that you can't pull out, or you're pulling out more than you can put back in unless you want to spend it. So it's a case of jiggling and juggling here with the numbers to really ensure you've got this thing tweaked to give you the maximum sort of benefit without eating too much into your super. The fees on a pension account, yes, generally speaking, are higher here. But of course, if we can get tax deductions, basically then perhaps the tax deduction is wiping out that fee plus more. Again, it's just a case of doing the numbers as whether it all works out for you. No insurances inside a pension. So when you finally do retire, you can't have insurance inside the pension. And if when you're finally retired and that's all you've got, there will be no insurances whatsoever. So, a few things there to consider. And if you need help to sort of do some tweaking and jiggling and juggling, book an appointment with us and we can start doing some numbers to sort of see what works for various different scenarios. Look forward to joining us on another session.